What's up my loves, my name is Paige, this is Paige with Paige. Today we're going to be doing my March wrap up and my Q1 statistics. Welcome to this video. I want to talk through all the books that I read in March. I'm so excited that I got through 12 and there was some chonkers thrown in amongst the mix. The way that I'm going to structure this video is talk through my March statistics, talk through the books, and then continue on to the Q1 stats. I feel like having the March stats and then diving straight into the Q1s is just a lot of numbers. So talking through the books, having a bit of a break, and then diving back in and talking about the Q1 statistics. Let's dive into the March stats. So like I said, I read 12 books, which equated to 4,400 pages nigged, and that fills my soul with joy. Equates to be 142 pages per day and 366 pages per book. So I was reading some big ones, also some small ones, but big ones made an appearance. So I read one that was under 100 pages, 3 that were in the hundreds range, 1 that was in the 200s range, 2 that were in the 400s range, 4 that were in the 500 range, and 1 that was in the 600s. I am blown away with the amount of big books that I read. Like, I read 5 books that were over 500 pages last month. Like, what the fuck? It was nuts. I'm so proud. With that, my average rating was a 4.17, which I think was slightly lower than months previous. Oh, it was higher than February, but I think lower than January. If I'm having 4-star reads across the board, I'm pretty happy. I read 2 classics. What the fuck? 1 contemporary, 1 dystopian, 3 fantasy, 1 historical, 1 horror, and 3 sci-fi. I read 1 physical book with no audiobook. I read 1 ebook. I read 3 ebook and audiobook combinations, and I read 7 in the physical and audiobook combo. In terms of age range, I read 3 middle grades, 2 YA, 6 adult, and 1 children's, which I'll explain. For ratings, I had 1 3-star, 2 3.5s, 4 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 3 5 stars. I read 5 standalones. I started 1 new series, which I didn't even know was a series. I had 6 books that were continuations of series. These were across 4 series. I didn't catch up and I didn't complete any. So I've broken the back. I have started my first series in 2023 and I want to do an effort. But anyway, my biggest book was The Secret History, which was 629 pages. And my smallest was Namazu and the Greatest Gift, which was 24 pages, and that was also the children's like picture book. My listening hours was a 38.5. Publication year was very interesting. I had 1 that was from 1961, 1 that was from 1982, 1 that was from 1992, 1 from 1999, 3 from the year 2000, 1 from 2011 to 2015, 2 from 2016 to 2020, 1 2022 release, and 1 2023 release. Fuck, I need to keep that. So the first book that I read in March was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This was a buddy read, and I surprised myself by giving it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I thought that it was not going to be my vibe, but then the initial part really captivated me, as you can see by the tabs that were in the front section and not in the later half. I genuinely feel if it had have been like the philosophical discussions in the beginning of the book, I would have loved this just as that. I didn't need all the extra bullshit that came with it, but I'm still really happy that I read it. I found that it was very easy to consume. There are numerous slurs in this, and so that was really hard to read, especially listening to it via the audiobook. It makes me, like, I was questioning so much, being like, why did narrators agree to this? They have to say these words, and then I have to listen to these words being spoken, like, no? So I did tag the sections that the F slur was used, not fuck, I'm more than happy to say fuck, but the F slur was used in the Discord where we had a buddy read going, so then people were able to catch it and be forewarned if they did need to, because I ended up reading this in the first 5 days of the month. Then I read The Journey by K.A. Applegate, which is the 42nd book in the Animal series, so I'm finally getting through them. The end is in sight, and I gave this 3 stars. It was very weird. Some of my least favorite villains that aren't really villains, they're just stupid, reappeared, and so that wasn't very fun, and I didn't really give a shit. There were elements to it that just didn't do anything. So it was, again, an okay read. I'm taking into consideration that these are written for a middle grade audience, and I think they would have really enjoyed it. I just couldn't help but think of the Magic School Bus series where they travel into the human body, like that. This was a direct cop-off of that episode. I don't know which one came first, but someone's plagiarized someone somewhere. So whilst this was okay, it just didn't do anything for me. Next up, I read Hannibal by Thomas Harris and gave this 4 stars. I am very much surprised with how much I'm enjoying this series. I thought I was not going to like it. I suppose I had built it up in my head as some like big scary thing, and it is unsettling in sections, but for the most part it's just really interesting. I liked the amount of fucked up. Some gentlemen and words in this drive me up the fucking wall, but it's like The Secret History. I don't like the things that are happening, but I'm also not meant to. If they could just take the slurs out and not use that, because I don't really feel like it adds to character development. If anything, it just flattens my experience. That would be great. Overall, they're interesting reads, they're captivating, and it was something that I was happy to continue on with. I don't know where the last one's gonna go, but I'm very curious to find out, as this is third in the Hannibal Lecter series and we get to hear a little bit more of Hannibal's background, which was fascinating. Next up, I read The Test, again by K.A. Applegate, and this is the 43rd Animorphs, and again this one 3.5. I definitely enjoyed this more than The Journey. This has some really fucked up characters, and I love Tobias and I fear for him. Again, I felt it was, I still feel it's a little bit out of character. I feel like having 43 books in, they're going to run out of steam somehow, some way. And I feel like this is the point where we're just getting through to the end. So it's going to start hopefully ramping up soon, but I don't know. It was an interesting one because I was very curious into Bias's story and the villain in this, but at the same time, it just feels so outlandish that it's like, really? We're going here? I think I'm also burnt out on these and it being the rinse and repeat. Even though I'm staggering it, not only reading 3 a month, I've read 43 of them. And I'm an adult, so I take that into my considerations when rating this, because I'm not the target demographic. They're still fun, they're okay reads, just I know kids would get so much more out of this than I am. Next up, I read The Namazu and the Greatest Gift, which is by Bandri Oda, or Square Enix, and this is a Final Fantasy picture book. So this is the children's book because I don't think it's middle grade, but it is so bloody adorable. I love it so much. I showed that picture last time, but it's still so cute. I have no idea what these creatures are because I don't play Final Fantasy, but Ash does. I also needed to read something that was over 4.6 stars on Goodreads, and this was one of the very few things I had on my shelf that fit that and I could fit in with my TBR. So, because none of these other books came anywhere close to that. So that's where I was at with this one, and I gave it 5 stars because it's just wholesome, it's really beautiful, it's a palette cleanser, and I had a whole lot of fun with it. I do think if you have someone that is into Final Fantasy, I think this would be a really cute addition. Next up, I read The Once and Future Witches by Alice C. Harrow, and also gave this 5 stars. I was not prepared for this going in. The writing is beautiful, the messages are fantastic. I picked this up for the TBR knockout of having to do with women's rights, and this is based in the suffragette movement in 1893, and there was just so much more to it, and the witches in this, I cried a lot and I think I read this at the perfect time. It is a chonky beast, like I'm backing and falling between my biggest books that were on my mandatory TBR, but I flew through it. I had so much fun with it. It took me 3 days to read. I couldn't put it down. I was so interested in it and just absolutely adored these characters. I think the characters were the perfect combination of the stereotypes without being stereotypical, that just, yes! And so I adored this. I'm not a big historical reader. I think this month proves otherwise, but I ate this shit up. And if you know of any more witchy books that are set around the suffragette movement, which I feel like there are going to be heaps out of, just the content matter lends well to that, please don't let me know what they are because I want to get more of my hands on this sort of style. Also, if you like this, did you like the 10,000 Doors of January? Because I feel like people go one way or the other. I love Alex E. Harrow's Fractured Fables novella series, so I know that I liked their writing, and then seeing it in here was just and I want to know, is 10,000 Doors going to make it or break it for me? Because I'd rather avoid it if it, like, you love this and don't like the other. If you love both, please let me know, because I want to pick it up. Then I read The Unexpected, and I give this a 4 stars. We're finally getting to the meat, to the big build up. I'm excited to see where this goes. I think I've got 10 more. I know that this is not one of the most highly rated, but she comes to Australia. I'm gonna be biased. Seeing just how they approached Australia in this was hilarious. Realistic? Absolutely not. I love Cassie's character development though. I really appreciated taking it somewhere else, and I love that it was into my backyard. So this has got a lot of like homebody love for it, and that's probably why it's so high. It was bringing back that nostalgic feeling for me, and also for me as a kid reading these books, not the animals, but books that were set in the outback, and so having that sort of nostalgic vibe to it was just absolutely wonderful, and I'm very excited to see where it progresses from here. Next up, I read Deviate by J. Kristoff, and I hate the fact that I gave it a 3.5 because this was actually decent. I don't dislike the Lifelike series. I find it quite entertaining, and I love Lemon Fresh, who's one of the protagonists that we're following in this, as well as Cricket. So it's hard because those characters are decent, and we're not sexualizing minors, which is a problem in every other series. I do know that the first one did have a little bit more of that, but because the crew was separated, in this one it wasn't as prevalent. There was still teen romance, but it's not like as intense as some of the other ones, and not as gross. I really felt an emotional connection to one particular character, and it sort of broke me. So that was good. So 3.5. I just really want to finish this series so I can stop talking about it on my channel now. And for that, this fulfills Liv's life prompt of give an author a second chance. So this is Jay's like 30th chance. I don't know why I keep going back, but it's because I own the books. I know why. I own the books, so I keep going to it. So put my little Fox and Cactus washi tape. I'll leave that link below if anyone would like to browse the Australian sticker shop, which has become my heart and soul. So it's just here, I believe. Yeah. And there we go. I'm not going for a bingo at the moment. It sort of just depends. I will probably do 1, 2, 3, those 3 in April. September I'm there, so it just depends on where we go. But that is checked off the list. Next up, I read Britt Marie Was Here by Frederick Buckman, and I also gave this a 5 stars. I am realizing how much I adore Frederick Buckman's writing, and the fact that they just do the writing in the way that hits my soul. I'm also realizing how much I love grumpy old people in books, and nothing bad happens to them, because I am notorious. The House with Chicken Legs, the daughter yells at her Baba Yaga figure, and I cried immensely because like they described her heartbreaking. Can't deal with that. It hurts me deeply. I read that book in like 2018 and 2019, and I still remember what happened. This is wholesome, but it's also empowering. Britt Marie is learning to find life after an event, and I just really found it so lovely. I doubt this is going to be for everyone, but it was exactly what I wanted, and it was really wholesome whilst not shying away from hard topics. And I also think that the way that Britt Marie's character was done just really cemented Buckman as a character writer. Like, he just does it so exceptionally well. There really isn't much of a plot to this book. Like, there's an underlying plot, but it's not the point. And I think Buckman really makes the points that he's trying to make without needing a massive plot. His characters just lead the way, and Britt Marie was bloody fantastic. I was not prepared to fall in love with this as much as I did. Next up, I read Blood Debts by Terry J. Benton Walker, and this was an arc from NetGalley, and I gave this a 4.5 stars. I found this really interesting. It was very easy to read. It is definitely bordering on new adult, but these kids are in spring break at high school, but they've read older. They read more mature, and I feel like it was interesting seeing that as someone that's older but not that old. I feel like they conceptualized teenagers accurately. There was sex scenes and their drive, their determination, their sense of person was really, really interesting. And then on top of that, it's dealing with a slew of hard topic matters. We've got grief, we've got parental neglect, we've got racism is actually a really strong focus of this, as there are different affinities of magic, and it was just exceptionally done. I think that the way that Terry decided to broach all these different topics was done and interwoven so intricately that it made sense that these things lead into this and that led into that, without giving too much in-depth into what happens in the plot, because I feel like it's one of those that has a few twists and turns. So that was my last mandatory, so I moved on to Catch-22, which was one of my big book picks. This is by Joseph Heller, and I gave this 4 stars. I didn't really like the language used in it. Again, as a running theme, apparently for the past 2 months, like including April, I'm reading things with so many slurs and I'm like, oh! I get it's a product of this time. I still don't like it, and I still don't think that, like, it's okay, because it's not. I appreciate what it did, I just didn't care enough. I get that it's a satire on war, and I get that it was making a commentary that was needed. I feel that it was entertaining in a lot of different sections, and the concept of Catch-22 was well explained and interwoven throughout. I just don't give a shit about war stories. Like, it's not something I enjoy in the slightest, and world wars sort of vibes, not like fake fantasy wars, they're fine. But I feel like the way that it was explored was really well crafted, it was very cleverly done, and it just sucked that I did not give a shit about the actual like setting and plot in terms of the war-based narrative. The conversations were definitely like brain twisty and hurt me moderately, but I liked that. I liked the fact that it made me think, because I was like, wait, what the fuck? Oh, yeah, okay. And I really enjoy books that do that, so 4 stars. And then finally, the last book that I read was The Valley of Horses by Jean M. Ull, and this was for Sierra's children read along, and I gave this 4.5. There is a lot more smut in this book than I was prepared for. There were throbbing members, and so it just, yep, this definitely was not the growing up story of the first one, but I really enjoyed it. I love seeing our characters grow and learn new things. I love seeing the connections between the different types of individuals and the way that they're talked about. I love the challenging of differences, and I really enjoyed this. I think that it could have been shorter. They do not need to be over 500 pages long, and the 4th one's like closer to 900. Ugh. I don't think they need to be that long, but I'm enjoying them, and they are pretty easy to read once you get into the swing of it, and I find that it's nice just to meander along with it, so there's no harm in that. And yeah, I just was very not prepared for smut, that to the intensity that it was, but I'm here for it as well. So I'm keen to continue on, and we'll be reading the 3rd one in May. My battery's dying, but these are the physical books that I read in the month of March, and very happy with these chonkers. Like, oh my god. Deviate's also 496 pages, so I had some hefty bars this month. And you know what? I'm not mad about any of them. Hello, so it's now a few hours later, and I realized that I said I was going to talk about my Q1 stats, and haven't. I did, however, go through and pull some of the 2022 stats that I was interested in, so I'll talk about those very briefly. So I'm not going to go into breakdown by month because I do that in my monthly wrap up, but my total books read are 36, with 24 of those being off my own physical TBR. Whereas last year I had read 60, with 30 of those being Animorphs, and reading 34 books in January alone. So it blows my mind that if honestly I hadn't been reading the Animorphs, I'd be pretty on par for where I'm at. So happy with that. My pages read is currently sitting at 11,914, whereas with the Animorphs it had bumped it up 15,413. Significant difference considering the fact that they're like 100-page books, but it's what it is. And my hours currently listened are 106, whereas for 2022, it was 114. So not too much of a difference there. Books acquired. I have acquired 19 books this year. This time in 2022, I had already acquired 38. I am so chuffed that I'm just making more conscious decisions and enjoying the things that I'm picking up as well. So like I said, I'm not going to go into the breakdowns of pages, looking at formats. Oh, I had 20 audio, which was the Animorphs, whereas this year I have had 0. Just straight audiobooks. I've listened in tandem, or I've read an ebook or a physical book alone. My numbers are pretty much the same outside of that. I did read a fuck ton more ebooks this time last year, but my physical and audiobook combo is around the same. Another stat that was completely skewed was my age range. So for this, my largest section of read has been 17 books as adult, which is 47%. And then 31% has been middle grade. Whereas for last year, it was 53% middle grade, 26% adult, and 16% YA. So just interesting. Library was also definitely higher in 2022, not so much this year as I'm trying to focus on these. Audiobook location, same sort of deal, with Libby being huge, whereas now it's about 50% because I'm listening through other forms. If I do get some audiobooks, because I'm now classifying Animorphs as other rather than Libby, whereas last year I was tracking it under the Libby app. So works about the same. In terms of my owned, it is at 66% reading off my shelves, which is fabulous. Then in terms of series, this is one that I was also super interested in, and this year I've managed to break my spreadsheet down into standalone, started, continued, caught up, and finished, yada yada yada. So I've read 23 things that were part of a series and 13 standalones. So standalones are making up 36% of my reading, which is actually quite large, and I'm surprised by that. I thought I was focusing more on series. I have caught up on 5 series and I've finished 2. Whereas this time last year, I had read 49 things in parts of series with 11 standalones. Oh, so that's actually on par. Okay, interesting. But I had read 9 first books in series. I hadn't completed any, and 30 of those 40 were the Animorphs continuing in one series. So it's like, that significantly skewed my stats. And then I quickly went and put together my pages, because I predominantly, my mental goal is to keep my pages as 300 pages or more. I do want to have a bigger focus on big books, but I also understand I'm still trying to finish off the Animorphs and reading 3 a month of those. They're 100 pages each, so that's going to skew it for the moment. Currently, I have 2 books that are under 100 pages, 10 between the 100 and the 199, which I should have read 9 Animorphs, so 1 extra there, 5 in the 2 to 300, and then up. So I'm still sitting at over 50% being the 300 and more, but would like to put a bigger focus on bigger books. So that's the pie chart for this year. For last year, very entertainingly, this is the pie chart, and I had to adjust one thing and then it flicked to looking like this, and I was absolutely gobsmacked, because 30 obviously with the Animorphs are that 100 to 199 pages, which was 50%, over 50% of my reading. It was nearly 51%, which is nuts. And then at that point, I'd read a couple of things over, and then we had like a nice little skew of at least over a quarter of 300 or more, but it's nuts to see the difference. My genres obviously were super skewed. My highest category currently is fantasy with 11, and then sci-fi with 10, 9 of those being the Animorphs. But if we look at 2022, 60% was sci-fi at 36 books, and then 14 were fantasy, taking up 23%, and then we had a mixture of other things. I have read more classics this year than I have in years previous, so that's always good. And my average star rating was a 4.17. Let's round up. I didn't give anything less than 3 stars, 10 5, 12 4.5, 27 4s, and 10 3.5s. Whereas this year, my average rating is a 4.18, 9 5 stars, 8 4.5, 10 4 stars, 5 3.5s, and 4 3 stars. I feel like I'm getting harsher with my ratings and just going to the 4 and 4.5 because it doesn't feel like quite a 5-star read, so that's where it falls. And I'm happy to rate things lower as well. So that was just a little random breakdown of my reading and how it's gone, comparing Q1 to 2022 and 2023, and that pie chart of pages was just hilarious to me. So throwing it back to me to actually sign out of this video. So let me know in the comments, what was the best book that you read in March, or was there something that you were eagerly anticipating that you managed to get to? I am so happy I read The Once and Future Witches, but my battery died. Let me know in the comments anything that you want to let me know down below. And if you like this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this mess, feel free to subscribe. I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!